So, I guess QB and I were talking about Nick All-Stars Brawl just before we got on.
Yes, and basically the jump scare that I got while starting up the game.
hmm Well, Game Mill Entertainment, they, um, not great, but getting better. Is that at some point
Yeah,
I
I
had
can
also
only hope.
sent you, Nick Kart Racers 3. And, the fact is they had already released, like 3 Nick Kart Racers games, but they didn't even bother in order to get the original voice acting or use any voice acting at all for any of the characters.
Tragic.
Yeah, that was unfortunate for a long time. But then, of course, after people pretty profoundly demanded it for Nick All-Star Brawl, then eventually they decided to pipe it in. People went
Yeah,
as
all you can do
far.
is
Yeah.
fucking pray that it's not going to be awful.
People went as far as to actually just create their own mods for the game that threw character voices into it.
Oh, word.
Mm. And, a lot of the same lines were the ones that eventually landed in the voice acted lines in the final version of the game. I mean, of course, you gotta have Order Up, you gotta have Firmly Grasp It, you have to have No, This is Patrick. Um,
Now have you blasted Barnacle Head?
mhm. And, well, that's the first version of the game didn't have Squidward, though. The first version of the game had Sandy, and then Sandy got replaced by Squidward in the second
I was
one.
kind of quoting Plankton there, but...
Well, Plankton wasn't there until the second game either.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, I'm just listing off SpongeBob quotes,
Yeah. Yeah. And you had already talked about a lot of enthusiasm for playing as Invader Zim. And of course, I have to make fun of them for liking
Yes, squealy
Hot
squirrels.
Topic.
Of course, you have to
the-
make fun of me, and I don't even blame you. I don't blame anybody who has to make fun of me for absolutely loving Hot Topic. It's the law. It's divine order. Or the gods demand it.
The second game threw in a bunch of deep cuts. A lot of the cartoons I would literally watch on Nickelodeon all the time in the 90s. Like Rocko's Modern Life and Angry Beavers and...
Yeah, I've also something like Ren and Stimpy.
Well, I mean, Ren and Stimpy is kind of its own animal when it comes to the whole affair.
Yeah, we typically shouldn't open the big can of worms that comes with talking about, the classic.
Because if we continue to talk about Ren and Stimpy, eventually we're going to have to bring up the subject that it was created by a statutory rapist.
Classic.
Oh joy, oh
How
rapture.
dare you have a different opinion than me? Do you know who you're dealing with?
And that is the final smash for the characters in the game, hitting the nuke button.
Yep, just hitting the big red button.
A beautiful shiny button, the jolly candy-like button.
This is hilarious.
I like Ren and Stimpy. I'm not afraid to say it. It had like 2 episodes of. It had like 2 seasons of really good cartoons, and then it fell apart because of just how patently awful everybody who worked on it was.
The controversy can of worms.
Yeah. I mean, the controversy, of course, existed. Always existed amongst the people who were actually
and we
creating
shouldn't
the game.
acknowledge it.
But there's also the fact that, they were just doing a terrible job professionally running an animated television series.
Yeah.
It's a bigger contributor to its inevitable downfall.
Ah, yes, that was all this time.
Yeah, but that is a shame. That really was one of those very first truly mimetic cartoons. The ones where people would swipe catchphrases from, and the denouement of that is that
this is like one of the original, like the things where people would steal office quotes and put it in their bios. Like Ren and Stimpy was like the original.
Well, so we've covered all of those bases. Ren and Stimpy is just right up there with the greatest.
SpongeBob SquarePants, because
I appreciate that you have seen a lot more of this and you're more recognized of all of this, because oftentimes when I talk about anything that comes from the 90s.
Yes, well, things like that, they just transcended generations.
All right. So this is where I'm running the ad break.
If like far, far off in the future where everything is like technological and everything, we still reminisce about things like SpongeBob and Rugrats. That's like everything.
What else would you use the internet for? Except to watch
Yeah,
really
no,
old
what else would you
cartoons.
use it for?
Yeah. I think I know, but I don't think I'm allowed to say.
Yeah, duh, you're not allowed to say. Again, like I said before, divine order.
Divine order. I mean,
Exactly.
I've already made the statutory joke, so yeah, it's all downhill from this point forward.
Yeah, it's all downhill. But hey, let's at least make this level like really fun.
This is cartoons, folks. This is the cartoon channel. And we always hurt the ones we love, and the ones we love always hurt us.
Yep, and we wouldn't want it any other way.
So, speaking of other cartoon-related things, we got our new logo. This was actually designed by a fellow by the name of Limon, somebody I know peripherally through Brace for Haste VTuber channel. Great bunch of people, yeah. So, I ran into them. They were offhandedly making a logo for our mutual friend, Marin Mermaid. Say, they've been on a lengthy hiatus, and it still might be a ways off from completing, but everybody is eagerly anticipating her return and doing things for her, like creating art and...
yeah, hell, I might come back.
Someday.
I always come back. Fucking straight trap code.
Well, I would more than likely welcome your comeback. I can't speak for absolutely anybody else, Yeah. We're climbing ourselves up from the bottom, which is what we do pretty consistently on this channel as well.
Yeah, we do it all the time.
Oh, and also, of course, we have all of our music from Polly B from the 303, who's been crushing it lately.
Yes, of course.
Is that he very recently released a new track, which is an original song about Sonic and Tails, called Unknown Trials. Definitely worth a listen. He did it with a pair of other Sonic fan music creators called Johnny Gioeli and the band Ultrasonic Hero. It's a great track. Definitely listen to that.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Sonic fan track that I haven't enjoyed. Last time I enjoyed a Sonic fan track that much, it was Robotnik Rock. And that is simply because it is a bunch of Long John Baldry samples.
Okay, when I heard Robotnik Rock, I thought of the first thing that came to my head would be like some kind of plot in like a Sonic animated series. Or like Eggman is trying to get like some fame and influence by like starting up a rock band and entering some kind of battle of the bands kind of thing.
Possibly. That's probably something that I should do is try to see if I can get my audio share working with you, and then play Robotnik Rock for you at one point.
Yeah, that would be pretty funny.
Well, and also, it wouldn't hurt to play Polly B's track as well, because as I have so thoroughly been stating, it's a great track.
Yes, of course. Good track, good track.
It also means I should be sharing you absolutely anything at all in the Discord, so there you go.
Yeah, anything.
Alright, so, okay, chatter has been achieved. Okay, we're going to go ahead. We're going to go into our intro, and then we are going to start what we fully intended to do when we came out today. We are going to talk about some new changes to the D12 Duel system. All right.
Yes, particularly we are watching... what we were doing is we are going to be working on a magic system.
All right, so we'll be right back. Okay, hello, cats and kittens, felines and felidae, humans and variant humans, and every race, class, and subclass. Welcome to another episode of Brittany the RPG Cat. I am here with QB, and once again we're discussing the d12 Duel system, which is a system that I am working on that I will soon be releasing under a Creative Commons license. We're going to put this paperwork out into the ether of the internet for people to be beta testing and improving upon, and also we're eventually going to be using it for the release of the two books that we have been working for a really long time, Realms of Infinite Mana and The Baron's Wasteland. So, just
That
to
is correct, Brainy. So let's get to it.
So yeah, there's a duplicate of you, and
What?
that was
A
just
duplicate?
because
What?
I finally put a general Fuji reactive because I was streaming with Gold Tea Fish at the beginning of this week, and so yeah, that's just duplicating absolutely anybody who's here. I'm going to be turning that off of many a screen during the playthrough.
Yeah.
All right. So, just to summarize, the D12 Duel system is the main center of it is a battle system that is built around having two people roll just one d12. One person is the attacker, one person is the defender. They both roll a d12, and then we compare it to this chart right here. So at one point we talked about potentially changing the name of rank to power. Unfortunately, I still think it works better as ranked, so it is rank again. So you roll 1d12 is that eventually you determine which level that you have is that separated into a base 4 using the d12 will tell you whether or not you have a roll of level 1, which is 1, 2, and 3, level 2, 4, 5, and 6, level 3, 7, 8, and 9, or level 4, 10, 11, and 12. And then you determine whether or not this roll also counts as one of 3 numbers, which is we call the rank, is that is a level 1 roll is ranked 1, 2, and 3. A level 2 roll of 4, 5, and 6 still counts as 1, 2, and 3. 7, 8, and 9 also count as 1, 2, and 3. And 10, 11, and 12 also count as 1, 2, and 3. Is that once you determine how far apart you and your opponent roll in rank, then you're able to tell whether or not your attacking opponent has been able to remove between 1 and 3 hit points from your opponent, depending on which rank number that they landed on. And let me see. Defenders always defend. Is that in that situation, if a defender ever beats an attacker, the attackers just simply don't get to take off any damage. But then we also have our critical system, which involves any roll that lands in level 1 versus any roll that lands in level 4. Defenders who manage to land in level 4, as opposed to their opponent's level 1, get to counterattack. That's just like riposting. That's getting close enough to somebody and then just punching them in the face while you are hiding behind your shield.
Yes, exactly. Or something like a counterattack where somebody tries to attack you, but they fail. So you to a certain extent, in which you can use that attack against them.
Mm-hmm. And of course, critical rolls, whereas if level 4s go up against level 1 rolls, they get to hit you really hard. And it hurts. And they're not going to like you for it. Which is pretty standard for any tabletop play. Alright, so then, challenge rating is pretty straightforward. Just rolls of 1 to 10 based on challenge. So probably what I added to the document since we added was creating a character, but we also discussed this pretty significantly because we talked about the custom character sheets that we made for our own characters. Brainy, QB, and also Otto, who was here during the last stream. And so, just basically talk about how a character is basically made. I created a standard array. That is new. Is that if you do want to create a character using a standard array, the standard array is 10, 8, 6, 6, 4, and 4. And then you add a 1 and a 2 to 2 base numbers, which means that if you did want a stat that is 12, then you add +2 to the 10. But it actually might be more prudent to add those +1s and +2s to your 4s and your 6s so that you have rolls that count as either zeros or +1. Because if you
Yes, of
don't,
course.
then you're not going to have a +1 or a +2. And I think I actually do need to alter that just a teeny weeny bit because let me see my. Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to do that really quick right now. Okay, so we know that 7 and 9 are the first times you get a modifier. So if you add those to the 1s and the 1s, then those get to turn from +1s to +2s. And whereas you also have 2 digits that if you get them into the 10 and 12 range, then they can potentially become +2. So actually, what I'll do instead of turning this into 8, I'll turn this into a 9. So you have an equal opportunity of having like one of each number. Potentially you can have your 10 can potentially turn into a 12 if you put a +2 there. You know, but as long as you're in the 1 and 3 range, you would still get the +2 regardless. So you have one that is a +2. You have one number that is always potentially a +1. Then you have 2 numbers that could be altered to 7s, which would make them into +1 modifiers. And then 2 numbers that always have to be 0. I think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so just to make sure that works out the way that I want to. So we have a standard array, but then also if you do want to do dice rolls, my recommendation is roll a d12 7 times, drop the lowest number, and then add your 1 and your 2 to any 2 of the base numbers.
Yes,
That's how we did it before. Okay, so we're starting to get into the category of special abilities. Is that I've written out these rules as opposed to when I had described them during last week's show. So this is basically the way that it is written verbatim in the document. Is that there are 3 categories for special abilities. There are skills, there are martial arts, and magic. I think it was special skills in the previous document. Now it's just skills. Okay, the very special thing about the d12 duel system is that special abilities can literally be things that are made up word for word by the player, provided their ideas are cleared by the GM. However, there are what are actually now supposed to be 4 rules.
Totally not confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4 specific rules when it comes to allowing your players to invent their own special abilities. And I'm trying to write the 10 commandments of it, making your own custom stuff here. Rule number 1, special abilities always require a turn to be used. Either a player has to take a turn, both inside or outside of battle, to complete the ritual, to prepare to use their special ability, and during a turn initiative order, if either takes the entirety of 1 round to perform a special ability, and the special ability needs to go off and require the entirety of 1 round before it can be used again. So you either have to use it and then it recharges, or it either has to be charged and then you can use it. That's the first rule. The second rule, special abilities require characters to do something actionable to count as a special ability, whether it be a physical action or a meditative one. Meaning you always have to roleplay your character getting ready to use your special ability. Even the most basic magic spells require focus, whether within the interval of time described in rule number 1. If a player has to concentrate to perform their spell ability again, they'll lose the ability to do that if a non-player character or enemy challenges them to a duel. So, just the opportunity to always give your opponent a cutoff if they want to stop you from using or reusing a special ability. They can do it by attempting to attack your character.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Rule number 3, you cannot add modifiers from your base stats to your special abilities. Special abilities have their own modifiers, which are populated when you add them to your character sheet. Just like your base stats, any modifier greater than +2 up to the total number 12 is the highest you can possibly roll. So, the significant thing here is that in this system, either you roll a challenge roll or an attack roll using a base stat, or the +1 or +2 modifier that you have in your special ability. You can't stack the two. You either use one or you use the other.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, we have rule number 4. You have to add a dual condition to your character's special ability. This describes how another player or NPC can interact with your character to nullify or contradict a special ability by challenging them to a duel. So this was a mistake that I had made with my own Brainy character sheet, is that one of them actually did need a dual condition, and I still need to write that out. I think it was also significant that when we were playing QB during the role play, it's just specify what the difference is between armor piercing, which is taking away 1 point from your opponent's defense, as opposed to using your shape-shifting ability, which naturally adds a +2 to QB's dice roll. You can either use one or those other abilities, depending on which one you were choosing how to do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, how to add special abilities to your character sheets. Special skills at default. Create up to 3 skills if you have one special skill. If your character only has one special skill, give it a +2 modifier. If your character has 2, add a +1 modifier to each skill. If you have 3, then you add no modifiers. And so that's just every character all the way across the board. A special skill. If you have 1, it's +2. If you have 2, it's a +1 each. And then if you have 3, then you have no modifiers. Having special abilities that don't have modifiers is not a deal breaker when it comes to the d12 duel system, because the way that the d12 roll works is that there's a range where anything can potentially be a pass or a fail.
Yes, that's right.
So you don't have to worry about maxing out abilities, because maxing out abilities only evens them up on one rank, and if people still roll above that level, then it's more than likely you're still not going to succeed at it. I'm sorry, but this is what we do in order to keep everything even.
Yes,
All right.
It is.
Mm-hmm. So, martial arts. Martial arts has a much broader definition in this game. If your character wields a sword, the sword-wielding skill counts as a martial art and is added to the martial arts section. If your character is a more literal martial artist, the special way they've learned how to throw a punch or a kick needs to be described, and a specific description of that martial arts move has to be written out the same way as it is per all of the special abilities. It's not just rule 2 anymore. It's just a matter of, customizing your special abilities. Okay, so this is the example I like to use. This is something that is extremely silly martial arts wise, that I got from an episode of the Parappa the Rapper anime, of all places. It is called the Mount Kilimanjaro Punch. Alright, so
what?
in order to perform the Mount Kilimanjaro Punch, you have to summon all of your ki by envisioning Mount Kilimanjaro.
What in the hell are you watching, Brady?
This is precisely what helps demonstrate the fact, because you have to be able to do that in order to do the Mount Kilimanjaro Punch, which means you have to write that in your description. Is that in order to perform it, you have to spend time meditating the Mount Kilimanjaro Punch. You can perform the punch, and then afterwards you would have to wait a turn in order to do the punch again, because you would have to presumptively spend more time meditating on Mount Kilimanjaro.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're following with me on this when it comes to that, because it's making me crack up as soon as I say it, because it's a silly example, but nevertheless, it's my example.
I think it kind of boggled my brain a bit.
Yeah. Well, otherwise, any standard attack is, you have, if you have just one martial skill, like all you do is swing a sword, like your standard fighter, then you get a +2 modifier. If you have 2 martial arts ability, you add a +1 to each modifier, and then if you have 3, you add no modifiers, which is exactly the same thing as the skills list. Okay, so those were the the two standard skill types for every character, any potential character in addition to non-magic users, and we'll get into non-magic use in a moment. But now we have to describe the magic system. The magic system is rather beefy simply because this is quite literally a manual that is intended to be really deep when it comes to magic using roleplay. So I have written out basically the entirety of the way magic works in my lore, and we'll have a gander at how that applies to um, how this is supposed to be added to your character sheet.
Mm-hmm.
So right out the gate, I say, bear with me on this one. The system, the d12 Duel was invented, was deeply centered on having characters who wield magic. Therefore, magic use is the broadest category in this system. Okay, the color of magic, which is also my favorite Terry Pratchett book. Mana is a construct of all elements of the natural order within a dimension, embodied in a species of in one way or another, that allows them to attune and control specific types of natural energy. We refer to this energy as the mana pool, a singular connection of every collected mana source into a single mass that all beings can access to perform their learned versions of magic. We considered a being who has access to this power as being tapped into the mana pool. And so, elemental types of mana, this is also all very standard. Control of earth, fire, water, air, plant life, and animal life. Which is under the category of elemental mana. The mana of light and shadow, which not only does have an elemental component, but also is life and death, healing and necromancy. Just anything that has
basically
to do...
thing and the flip side of said thing.
Precisely. Just light and dark. And so we do designate by saying, some people, once upon a time, people thought it was good or evil or white or black magic. We don't want to be that quite literally black and white about it.
Yes, exactly, because like in the series, like QV is using like shadow magic, what's perceived as like dark magic for good, while Isaacson is using the light mana, or seen as like what's seen as good for evil.
Mm-hmm. So, something I had suggested ages ago when we were role-playing these characters, but also inevitably just so that I can introduce how light and shadow works in my lore, in my storylines. People from various cultures invented binaries that explain hope and fear, good and evil, white or black magic. Light and shadow can be controlled in the same manner as elemental magic. Control of light and shadow typically allows its users to construct themselves of embodiments of pure white light or deep dark shadow, giving them, among other things, the ability to telekinetically manipulate objects and people with the influence of light or darkness. Priests, like mages, prefer acts of light, leading to the purification and freedom of beings, as well as healing and resurrection of those who have been harmed. Shadow mages, like Necromancer, dwell with the dealings of the dead, and may bring undead souls from the grave to do their bidding. Again, the learned wizard has the ability to cherry-pick either of these skills and use them in limited use spells, at times even simultaneously, to meet their ends. Prestidigitation. Okay, so sometimes this is called cantrips, sometimes this is called neutral magic, and lots of other engines. I just have a tendency to call it prestidigitation, which is the literal translation of which is show magic, but in my sense, it really just isn't show magic. It's really just domestic magic. It is stay-at-home magic. The ability to levitate objects, conjure items from thin air, create illusions and dancing lights, and spells which bend objects and animate brooms to clean floors. So in lore, we're not including lore in this particular sheet, but in lore, we say that, the halflings created prestidigitation. Because the halflings, just highly domestic and hospitable beings, so they naturally were just using magic in order to, as they put it in the Sword and the Stone, clean dishes and wash windows. sweep floors.
Yes, and occasionally do funny little gags.
Mm-hmm. You know, Disney, of course, and The Sorcerer's Apprentice is based on, just several animated cleaning broomsticks.
Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm. Animation and the giving of life, two different elements of performing a magic spell. Because
It's one of the elements sometimes.
bringing things to life requires the belief that a person has a soul and a sense of self-awareness. I think, as I was said in an episode of Milo's Murphy's Law, is that, not just animated, but incredibly well storyboarded. You should really thank the storyboarder for this. He just became a daddy.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, it was very nice of them to, give that heads up. And of course, I'm animated, which means I have no soul.
Of course, that's all here.
Anyways, moving on, sickle magic. So we're going into the types of magic that are just kind of, not innate, but just exist in the world. So the first one, of course, is sickle magic, the invention of a sigil, creating a spell, converting it to a special character, and then applying it to an object, like a sheet of paper, or a sword, or having it on your body in the form of like a tattoo, or a branding, or etched magic sigils engraved onto semi-inanimate beings like golems and automatons.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. So when sigils are cast, single written spells like fireballs can be brought forth, but since this magic is not cast by an intelligent living being, there can be no variance as to how this spell reaches its final form. Finally, alchemy and shamanistic magic, which is both the potion makers and the medicine men. And so, obviously, when somebody makes magic medicine, you drink it once, you get the properties, and then the properties wear off after a while.
Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm. And so, the way that we'll discuss specifically how an alchemist or shaman uses these abilities, because now this is actually the brand new section. This is about how being a specific school of mage affects the way that you cast. Something that I worked on so that I could add it as a special original feature to these books that we're soon about to be publishing. Okay, so if you're a non-mage, I already said that we were going to be getting to this earlier. If you use absolutely no magic power at all, if you are not even somebody who mixes potions, then you can add one skill to your skill list and then one skill to your martial arts section, which means you can now have up to 4 in each section. But if you do this, then they still have to have no modifiers. So
yes, exactly.
You get the boost of, just having 4 skills and having 4 martial arts because you use no magic, but it also means that you don't have any modifiers on those.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so sorcerers, the most basic types of mages, they have magic in their blood and can cast skills like they're a bodily function, but they only wield one type of mana. Skilled sorcerers become really skilled at their one mana type, so they have the ability in order to creatively use their spells in ways that can actually be very powerful. So, as in that vein, if you're a sorcerer, then if you choose only one type of mana and then you create 3 spells using just that kind of mana, all of those spells have a +2 modifier. Because you just happen to be really good at fire. So, yeah, you just are exceptional. You're an exceptional mage when it comes to throwing fire everywhere.
That's correct.
Mm. Which is often what the mages in isekai anime are like, incidentally.
Yeah, coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We explode. Mm-hmm. Warlocks.
Explosion.
Mm-hmm. Explosion. We just blow stuff up. Anyways, warlocks. Warlocks are put in this earth at the blessing of a god or another specific mystic creature. Their magic is limited to what their magical patron can wield, which is more often limited to 2 forms of mana. So, slight upgrade from the sorcerer is that if you're a warlock, you tend to be limited to 2 forms of mana, because there are gods of, 1 or 2 things, but things that are still have a tendency to be interrelated with each other.
Yes, that's right.
So QB has a demigoddess named Mazelthod who wields light and shadow.
Yeah, so QV only uses shadow mana.
Mm-hmm. So if a warlock is a single magic user, exactly the same way that a sorcerer would be, then the 3 spells that they choose all get a +2, which is what QB does. But, if you do want to, do 1 spell each of both forms of magic, then those would get a +1 modifier. But you would still get 3 spells, and they would all have +1 modifiers, which is the significance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It would be a significant upgrade.
Mm-hmm. So, priests, bards, and paladins, at least in my system, they all basically cast the same way. All practitioners of holy magic, whether said magic comes from a specific god or their own innate attachment to that which is divine, even if it's their own singing and performing ability. This is why the bard is the same as a priest or a paladin in my system.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense to me. It comes from different kinds of virtues, and it would make sense because, something like a bard would probably use, the virtue of passion or something.
Mm-hmm. I guess everybody is into, Donkey Kong Bonanza right now. I am pretty sure, yeah. The preteen Pauline that is in that game is effectively a bard in my universe.
Oh yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm. They sing, and then magic happens to Donkey Kong.
Yeah, basically. That's basically a bard using a spell to give their team some buffs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so priests, bards, and paladins possess either magic of light or shadow and 1 other magic ability. So they are somewhat locked into if they have 2 different types of mana, one of them has to either be light or dark. That's the divine component of it.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Mm-hmm. All 3 of their spells always receive a +1 modifier. And they also have the option of always adding a 4th spell, and that 4th spell being basic healing, which we've described as rolling 1 die, counting only your rank, and then healing that many hit points to yourself or a friendly character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's so of course healing never has a modifier because it doesn't actually require you to duel. It is one of the lone spells that doesn't require you to duel, so you can apply a modifier to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so witches and wizards. Yes, there is a difference between a witch and a wizard, and it has nothing to do with gender.
Yes, basically the difference here is that wizards went to college while witches are high school dropouts.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, that's kind of a bit unkind to saying the wizards. Is that I tend to prefer saying that.
Is it not raw, right though?
Well, I tend to prefer to say that a witch is a magical doctor, a wizard is a magical professor. It's not the people who went to college; it's the people who have a tendency to stay in college.
So is my dropout thing still kind of correct?
Kind of. Let me just go through the rest of the description, and then it'll be perfectly clear. Okay. While wizards are known for being career scholars, witches are equally intelligent, but known for merely occupying small areas like villages and using their magic, hopefully for the good of those who live there. Witches can create 3 spells of any mana type that have no modifiers. You can basically pick any mana type if you are one of the intelligent spellcasters, but they never have modifiers. And witches have the bonus ability to add alchemy, and shamanism as a bonus for skill with no modifier, and create potions on a list created by a GM outside of battle only. So the distinction between witches and wizards, it has to do with one special ability. The witches are often the people who do both magic and also alchemy.
Yeah, basically they do witch doctor kind of style things.
And then wizards, they appear to know it all, arrive precisely when they intend to, and appear enigmatically to help adventurers out of jams. Neurodivergence is not a requirement, but it's often a trait. Wizards can cast up to 3 spells of any mana type with no modifiers. That's the exact same as witches. In any environment during roleplay, if there exists written magic, such as a magic sigil, a scroll, or a spell book, a wizard can roll a d12 as a skill roll to determine whether they can understand the spell, and then trigger and disarm it. And so that's the significance, is that whenever a wizard just happens upon a curse, or a magical trap, or a sigil, and they can roll a d12 as a skill roll, and then they actually might be able to manipulate that magic at default, even though it's just magic in the environment and it's not part of their spell list.
All right.
So that's the distinction between witches and wizards, is that, choose the option of, also being able to make potions, or choose the option of also being able to understand magic in the role-playing environment. All right. So, okay, once again, we're getting into the slightly more made versions of magic. Alchemists and
their own kind of versions of magic, yeah.
So, alchemists and shamans, 2 sides of the same coin when it comes to creators and with magical properties. Alchemists create potions of mana-related components with magical properties. Shaman create medicines and panacea, also out of mana-laden components with magical properties. Specify whether you're an alchemist or a shaman as a skill in your skill list. If this is your only skill, then you get the +2 modifier. It means that you're singularly skilled as an alchemist or a shaman. Otherwise, you still have to share the modifier points with the other special abilities. Pick up to 3 potions from the potion list to prepare in a roleplay outside of battle. The GM has to determine if you have time to create up to 3 potions, depending on where you are during roleplay. When you are playing a alchemist or a shaman, your spell list basically becomes the list of the 3 potions that you temporarily prepared at any given time. Is that you just write that into that section, And probably something that we'll do later on during this stream is that we'll start to populate that potions list, so that we can come up with, just a handful of really good standardized potions and medicines that alchemists and shamans can make.
Yeah, like examples of what they can do.
Okay, so this is my most original addition to creating a magic class. I have a special designation for Jinn. And so you can already imagine if some people, in any other tabletop role-playing system, if you had a genie, that genie is just an extremely omniscient magical creature that intervenes in a deus ex machina kind of way, and more than likely is the owner of the GM's particularly bad Robin Williams impersonation.
Something that's like divine intervention.
So, divine intervention, because that's what you use a genie for, because they're so OP, They are characters that would probably severely kneecap a section, because they are out there handing wishes like Jambi to Pee-wee.
Yes, exactly. We can't just have that all the time.
Yep. So, I have always kind of created a slightly different lore version of a genie, and I'm just adding it to this system.
Also known as a Jinn.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jinn is actually probably the most traditional way of saying genie, so that's why I use Jinn.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is what I say, is that genie's abilities are rather overstated in myth. The Jinn are simply altruistic priest-like mages with the divine trait to use magic for the benefit of others, and they live in lamps and bottles to live a life refraining from material wealth. So, if you're thinking about a mage who is a Jinn actually happens to be a nice guy who is more than likely practicing a completely unmaterial existence.
Yeah, exactly. In this kind of version.
Yep. Scheherazade, kind of greatly overstated this and made them omniscient beings, but really they are just, magical altruists.
Basically see it as like magical Canadians.
Mm-hmm. Hey there, neighborino. How would you like me in order to grant you a wish?
What do you wish for?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The other myth that typically surrounds Jinn is the ability to twist a wish. That is, give an individual something that they ask for, but in a wicked way that eventually leads to their ironic downfall.
An example of this would be somebody who would wish to be able to jump really high would be turned into a frog.
Mm-hmm. And in my version of that, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Is that the Jinn actually does have the ability to dole out ironic punishment anytime that they want to. It's just probably only happens whenever they run into a literal Jafar. And
basically, if they run into like a douche canoe that probably wants a kind of selfish wish, they should probably also disrespect them, then but you're gonna get an ironic punishment, buddy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to find a way in order to turn that to twist that around until you've been turned into a hamster.
Exactly. Like for instance, if you wish that you want something like a GPS, I'll give it to you, but you better believe that's not going to have batteries in it because you never specified that you wanted it to have batteries in it.
Mm-hmm. You walk immediately into it, and then the Doomsday device explodes because it was in fact so powerful that that's what it was bound to do.
I couldn't take it.
Mm-hmm. So for Jinn, choose 3 spells of magic mana type with no modifier unless they are only using Prestidigitation, Light, or Shadow Magic, then they gain a +1. That is, you get a bonus if you're sticking exclusively to Prestidigitation, Light, or Shadow Magic. In and out of battle, if a friendly character wishes for a Jinn to use a spell, which requires that other character to use 1 turn, then the Jinn can turn that into a +2 modifier. Because they're not the one who wanted the spell, the other person did.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so that is how you turn Jinn into a slightly more playable character type, as opposed to it being an incredibly mystic being.
And a actually usable school of mana.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any particular opinions when it comes to that?
No, I think it's all good. Mm-hmm. Like, nothing else for me to add.
Yeah, well, as I just wonder, because this is probably the most original thing that I'm adding to the whole shabazz, so...
Yeah, I really like it.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so, Sigil Casters, we've already kind of discussed them at length, is that, Sigil Casters have an unlimited amount of spells depending on where they can be found in roleplay. As I said, is that a good role player will put, magical symbols in different places all around their environment. And if it just so happens that they are traveling with a witch or a wizard, the wizard can use the skill roll in order to add that sigil to a sigil caster. It would require them to etch it onto their skin or etch it onto a weapon.
Basically they have to put it on something to imbue that thing that they put it on with a magical energy.
Mm-hmm. So, sigil casters, they're not limited to... Sigil casters are not limited to, how should I put this? They're not limited to only 3 spells at level 1. They can find as many spells as they want in the environment, and then they would need some help from somebody who's learned enough in order to copy it onto them.
Yes, exactly.
The other penalty is that these spells are never cast with a modifier.
Basically.
All right, so we're getting into the sections that we're going to have to start writing here. So the first thing is that, and this is definitely what I wanted QB to be here with me when we did this.
Yeah,
Is that we're going to talk about NPCs and minions. We are rewriting the Baron's Wasteland book, and the significance of that is that this was supposed to be one of our first original monster manual style books.
Yeah, basically this is like basically our first like little addition to like the Palace of Paragon system by bringing in the Baron's Waste.
Precisely. So I have the opportunity to write this out with QB's help, and they can provide me feedback about how this is going to affect the rewrite of their manual. Okay, so I think one of the first things that I had wanted to state is that minions always only go up to 6 in any of their base stats. Okay, so let's start out, with a base stat list. I just copied this from the character sheet. Is that we have strength, agility, physique, intellect, reasons, and appeal, which is something that all the minions will have as well. Okay, none of these stats can exceed 6. And yeah, the simple reason for that is that they're just not allowed to have any modifiers in their they're not allowed to have any modifiers of +1 or +2 in their base stats, which is why we don't allow them to go up to 7 through 9, which would be a +1, or 10 through 12, which would be a +2. So, I mean, just offhandedly, you could populate them with any of those numbers, 1 through 6, strength, agility, physique, intellect, reason, and appeal. This is only to give it an idea of how physically strong that they might be. So, and then afterwards, then we give them skills. And so skills, once again, there are 3 abilities that are simply made up, but they have to follow those 4 rules of creation, and they're only limited to those 3 skills. They don't get martial arts. They don't get. They can have spells, and that's the thing that I'm going to be debating with QB about. Probably only single mana, probably only +1 modifiers, something along those lines.
Yeah, and only like really specific creatures.
So yeah, this is basically what we're doing here. So base stats, creating a minion. I was just gonna go ahead and say, creating an NPC is just using the character sheet but for a non-player character.
Yes, exactly.
So, populate your minion skills with any number as up to, I already said 6.
Yes, that's right.
And minions cannot have base stats without above 6 because they're not allowed to have modifiers.
Yep, that's right.
Write this in a way that shows how strong a minion is in base stats, without okay, so they can be roleplayed.
Alright.
Also, use an average of strength and physique in order to create their HP. You know, the average that you can get of strength and physique cannot get larger than 6, which makes them just squishy enough to be... Even the most powerful ones can still be dealt with because minions.
Yes, because minions.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to create, you know, just kind of generic character types, including several sample characters based on standard roleplay tropes. We're going to create the fighter, we're going to create the monk, we're going to create the barbarian. And of course, we're going to create one of every category of mage when we, you know, populate those sample lists. So when it comes to creating minions, let's create a ninja.
Mm-hmm.
What is more generic than wandering into a situation in a role-playing game and just happening upon several guys in black pajamas firing powerful martial arts at you?
Yeah, for no reason.
Uh-huh. All right.
Like, even if you asked them, they wouldn't even be able to tell you.
Okay, so... just offhandedly, ninja is probably not necessarily strong. In this array, we still have to figure out what the array is for the player characters, but in this array, I think an average strength should be 3.
Yeah, I believe so.
Mm-hmm. An agility, of course, ninjas are a little bit higher in that category. That one should probably be a 5. A physique is the strength. Well, try to think about, you know, just, well, I think I'm going to keep it the average and then I'll make the average 3.
Of course.
Intellect, also, you know, a 3. Keep it in the middle of the board.
Yeah, keep it average.
Reason has to be slightly more up there. We'll make that into a 4.
Yeah.
And then appeal. I don't know if appeal is necessary because they're not trying to show off.
Probably
they're trying
not.
to do the
Like
opposite.
the whole job of like a ninja is like to be stealthy and not seen. Like appeal isn't really part of it.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to give them a magic, and it's going to be, you know, sorcerer or shadow magic. Lone practitioners of shadow-based magic. And then, of course, probably their only ability is vanish.
Of course. Makes sense.
So what's significant is that even though they are ninjas, we don't give them a martial arts. So maybe I'll go ahead and just throw that in as a parentheses.
Yes, that's a perhaps.
Even though ninja clearly practice martial arts, their attacks are still only listed in the skill section. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so the sword. How about something like fast sprint, sword, and then throwing knives. Although sword is a little bit limited, maybe we want to give them something like a, dual attack.
Probably something like, yeah, something like that, or throwing knives.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, throwing knives is going to be one of 3 skills that we give them with no modifier.
Yeah.
So, significance of adding a fast sprint to our system is that we usually don't deal with movement in our system, so being fast sprinting means something else. And I believe
Jordan?
It should be like the ninja can duel with the person that they're attacking, and then the outcome would be that they have the ability to go first in the initiative.
So something like a sneak attack.
Mm-hmm. So, ninja can duel a player, with the player taking the defense position. If the ninja wins the duel, they get an opportunity to attack before the player. If they do, then they don't take their standard attack. Okay, so dual attacking. I feel like this one should be exclusively on a critical.
Yeah.
Okay. If the ninja has a critical over the player, okay, so the way that a critical usually works is that you roll a die again and then you add the additional damage points to your attack.
Right.
So what would be the significance of that? Is that if a ninja has a critical over a player, then instead of attacking, instead of adding a second die roll to their damage, they get an attempt to duel again in the same round. So, it means that, once again, is that you still give the player an opportunity to defend that second attack, as opposed to just adding an additional dice roll of damage.
Alright.
Alright. Okay, throwing knives. Okay, throwing knives, this is significant because, Okay, so because the ninja
Okay.
can attack, can
Can can
yeah, a ninja can choose any player initiative to duel. Although I don't think that's actually an issue. I don't think we ever created a situation where people are locked in melee.
yeah, I don't think we have yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what would the other thing be? A significant. Okay. Okay. A ninja can start. Okay, I got it. I got it. This is perfect. Okay.
Right?
A ninjas can begin an initiative by throwing a weapon at a player, starting a duel. If the ninja wins the duel,
The duel then.
then they get to put themselves first in initiative.
Okay.
So they throw the knife. That's basically what starts the fight. Is that if they're successful at doing damage by throwing the knife, I should say, outside of battle, you know. So if they succeed at doing this, they land the first blow, and then when the actual battle starts, they get to be at the top of the round.
All right.
Okay, so magic, shadow magic, and then their only spell is vanish.
Which is basically that whole trope of like ninjas like throwing down like
Mm-hmm.
a smoke bomb and just like completely disappearing.
Yep. Okay. A ninja can go into hiding in plain sight most often by throwing a smoke bomb, during the round that a ninja vanishes. They can't be seen by any of the player characters unless that character practices shadow magic.
Alright.
That character practices shadow magic, then they must duel against the shadow magic. Then the ninja must duel against the shadow magic user.
Yeah, basically this would be like trying to sneak around somebody who is basically in the exact same kind of kiddie pool as you are.
Mm-hmm. With gosh, how did we do shadow for QB?
Like
Let me
pretty much
open
with
up that
QB,
document
like
pretty
he
much.
can like detect any signs of shadow mana, and he can duel with to like kind of negate its effects.
Mm-hmm. But that was different because they had camouflage.
Yeah.
QB had to be at defense, so then that means that the ninja would have to be at defense.
Yeah.
If the Shadow Mana user wins a duel, the ninja can be seen by them. And so, yeah, that's as straightforward as we can possibly do that, is that we have a ninja that has 3 basic skills with no modifiers. They can potentially attack before a player. They can dual attack, which allows them to attack a second time if they make a critical. And then they have throwing knives, which can cause them to be the first in initiative by throwing a weapon at a player outside of battle.
Yep, that's right.
Then Ninja Vanish, which means that they can go into hiding by throwing a smoke bomb. Then they have to duel against the Shadow Magic User with the Ninja taking defense. So, by creating this, is that we actually created a way in order to create any potential minion character.
That's right.
So when we go back to rewriting the Baron's Wasteland, you have a basic idea how you would redo those minion characters. Although there is probably 1 or 2 characters that you actually might want to make into a full NPC. The main one popping into my head being that one very large T-Rex-like.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
They would have to have,
they would require having a full sheet, but everybody else would more than likely fall into this category.
Yeah, basically animals.
Yeah. And so, I'm debating whether or not, having a magic, having magic on minions, whether or not they receive a modifier, is that a minion would always have to do base stat rolls.
Yeah, that's right.
Because once again, is that the d12 duel is effective in a way that, rolls can be really big or really small. It doesn't matter what character is rolling them.
Yeah, that's right.
Alright. So, taking defense. Just write that down at the end. This skill has no modifier.
Yeah.
Alright. So this limits a minion to having maybe about 6 spells, whereas if they were any kind of standard magic user, they would have 9, and if they were a non-magic user, they would have 8.
That's right.
Just kind of talking about balance in general at this point. I think that's pretty fair. I think that works out, is because then you have player characters that have almost the same amount of skills. And then you have non-player characters that only always have 2 less skills.
Yes, exactly.
Alright, so let me see. That was one thing on the agenda that I had to check off.
Check.
We're talking about NPCs, we're talking about minions, we also have, I'm pretty sure that there was something that we had to do as far as, well, we did talk at length about magic, and so we basically okay, now I remember, we have to create the potions and shaman list.
Yeah, basically.
So, let me see. I also wanted to create a magic items section. Let me see. How can we do this? Is that...
well, you could probably start with talking about like the shackle of evolution, how that works in this kind of system.
Okay, so... one thing I do want to take care of, though, is that when we're writing the Creative Commons sheets, I don't want to contain anything that actually belongs to one of our specific characters. Because then that becomes the Creative Commons license, and then there's just part of us floating out that anybody can use and modify.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to take particular care when it comes to that. So I also did write magical items in the original versions of the character sheets. That's not going to be it. That's just going to be any items. Maybe special items.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll create that section roughly about here. Okay. Okay. Special items work outside of the character creation boundaries. We're outside of the creator requirements. Special items work outside of the special creation character creation requirements. You can create a special item, but the use of it has to be approved by the GM. Okay, so special items have the ability to add a modifier to to dice rolls, but not base stats. And can cause special effects in and out of battle. Sometimes skills and magic so sometimes skills and magic spells require you you to be holding a specific magic item.
Yeah.
Brady himself, he has two. He has to have his hat, and he also has to have his tarot cards.
Yeah.
And an opponent can duel to remove that magic item from you with the player in defend. Defense, I'll either base stats such as strength or either base stat modifiers. Let me put it that way. Either base stat modifiers such as strength or special ability modifiers that apply to that special item can be used to defend.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can be used by the player to defend against the removable of the item. Okay, so let's see. You know, we're gonna have to work on examples in a moment, but also, so we were creating special items because we needed to
d12.
Well, I mean, well, we needed to describe the shackle of evolution first of all, but we're not specifically going to be working with that. There was also something that we were that we discussed just before that. What else were we talking about? Special items, minions. Well, here we are. This is the part of the stream where my cohort and I just have a collective brain fart, try to remember specifically what we're still trying to add to the document.
I don't know. I think it's something about like putting this kind of combat system into the monsters. I think.
Well, no, I actually think that one's actually pretty straightforward.
I have no idea.
And so, yeah, you know, a certain amount of, you know, these descriptions. I mean, at one point I wanted to actually create generic character types, but that's going to be next week's show, so I'm not going to start doing it now.
Yeah, that's going to be for later.
We were talking very specifically about what we needed in order to help you to rewrite the Baron's Wasteland book.
Yep, that's right.
All right. So, I often wonder whether or not it is necessary in order for us to use special items in order to hold, like, standard types of equipment, like a sword. And when we were writing profiles last week, we also did just write Otto's special mace as one of the items he was carrying.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one thing that we can do, we can just go ahead and we can create that example.
Maybe we could.
So as we can think really just quickly offhand about, you know, something that we feel can be relatively generic, but something that can also always tends to trigger a special item.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, and then it finally popped into me. Okay, we wanted to make a potions list.
Yeah, the potions are the shaman list.
Okay, so do we want that to be here, or do we want that to be under Alchemist or Shaman?
I don't know.
I mean, we can make the magic section especially long because there's an unrelated list, or we can put it underneath special items, which is probably why I started talking about special items in the first place.
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got to come up with like maybe about a short list of the standard types of potions that are typically used in a tabletop role-playing game.
Right,
Offhand,
like
I can
things
think
like
of,
the debuff potions, kinds of buffing potions, poisons.
Potion of healing, potion of invisibility is a pretty common one. I mean, well, poison.
Come on now,
Potion of vitality.
Probably Probably a good way to think of it would be like how like in Minecraft there's like two different kinds of bottles or potions, like one for like typical consumption and the other one for throwing.
Okay, say that one more time.
Like what I said is that like maybe a good way to like difference like these potions is like to do like in a similar way like how Minecraft differentiates potions by having like two different bottles, like a one for like typical consumption and the other for throwing.
Yeah, that's true. We should definitely do that. And then we also throw in things in there like simple, you know, chemical bonds or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Subcategory. So just let's start with this initial list right here. Other than healing, vitality, invisibility, and a poison, what else do people typically use in TTRPGs?
Probably. I don't know.
We've also discussed how speed works. So potion of
Speed.
potion of speed.
I will not back down to anyone, and I will always try my best. For victory or for defeat, whatever. This is my test. Everybody supersonic racing, try to keep right on the ground. When you're supersonic racing, there's no time to look around. Everybody supersonic racing, running to the point of no return.
We might as well like come up with one for every base stat. Potion of strength.
Yeah, basically. Heal. But potions are pretty much like a pretty strong trope.
Yeah. You know, there's a part of me that actually wants to keep it relatively neutral. That it is a potion of appeal and not necessarily a love potion.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that, like, it is a trope, so it would make sense for it to have something like that to, like, increase appeal.
What were we calling that again? Potion of physique?
We're having, like, a potion for, like, each stat.
Strength, physique...
Reason.
Yeah, well then, instead of... well, potion of agility and potion of speed with that special property that we just discussed would be two different things.
Yeah, no, it's just...
Speed, potion of physique. Potion of sudden burst of speed, which is, yeah, that's still a bit too much of a over description.
I'd say probably like a speed potion.
Yeah. Just call it potion of speed. That's how we'll handle this. It's always going to be of. Things that people typically drink in tabletop RPGs. Other than beer, because beer is not actually something that's a special property.
I mean, it's a potion that can take a hit to your reason.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull up the character sheet for Lolly.
Yeah.
Because yeah, they were the potions master when we were using the other system. So.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Because what did we arm her with? Incidentally, we are actually
that would launch potions.
Well, I mean, she would just fire them using a slingshot, but...
That's what I said. It's like, when you asked me what weapon she had, I answered a slingshot that she would use to launch potions.
I mean, well, yeah, that's true. That was actually the weapon that she used, but I just kind of meant what kind of special properties her potions had.
I don't know.
So we gave her healing, we gave her poison, we gave her acid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, acid is also something that's frequently used in... Okay, so acid...
Oh, so maybe like some kind of like explosive potion?
I mean, I want to say nitroglycerin, because that's just a real life, something that has a real life property of a thrown potion.
Yeah.
Weaponized potions, nitroglycerin, acid. People are always throwing oil.
Yeah.
Lamp oil. I wonder if you can give that like a dual property, like if you throw oil in order to trip someone, or if you throw oil in order to light them on fire, or should I even be putting that in the magic section? I should just be putting that in the physical special items section.
Yeah.
No,
so it kind of like reminds you of like how to train your dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's this one dragon with two heads, or one dragon will like spew out some kind of flammable gas, while the other head will like spew out sparks to ignite it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be something like that.
Okay, so we got something that explodes, we have something that corrodes, we have something that can be set on fire.
Yeah.
So anything else can we think about, like specific types of weaponized potions?
Probably something like a sticky bomb.
Oh yeah, we did stink bombs for Lolly,
It
but
said sticky.
Yeah. Say, let me see. That is, make sure that the potion adheres to them, and then.
I think I can figure this out.
I mean, what I'm stumbling over when it comes to a sticky bomb is that sounds more like it would be a standard weapon instead of a potion.
Well, yeah, but also like consider expanding foam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could definitely work.
Like, plus it would make something to have something like, immobilizing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I was saying stink bomb a moment again, because we do definitely need a stun
stink.
bomb.
That doesn't mean immobilizing.
Okay, well, we're just kind of a little bit split when it comes to our reasoning here. I'm saying is that yes, we do need to write something for a potential sticky bomb, but then we also need to write something unentirely for that is a stunning potion, a debilitating potion, and I was using the example of the previous character sheet to say stink bomb. So a stink bomb would actually be a type of stun potion.
Yeah, alright, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so stun potions, sticky bombs, acid, and then I was changing nitroglycerin just to gunpowder.
What?
Because instead, just to make it a little bit more volatile, it's not just a liquid that explodes when it comes into contact with something. It's gunpowder, and it can still have the same property. You can throw it at something and it'll explode. And then we can just use that as the pretense of having gunpowder at large in the lore.
Okay.
Gunpowder bomb. As a matter of fact, maybe all of these are bombs now. Not a stun potion, but a stun bomb.
Maybe. Like a stun grenade? I don't know.
So, gunpowder bombs, stun bombs, sticky bombs, I'm thinking about something as like a remote proximity bomb, but maybe that's a little bit too similar.
Maybe.
Maybe. Um, maybe not proximity bombs, but definitely mines.
Maybe something like a potion of confusion.
I would still put that under stun bomb.
What are you talking about? It's like the orb of confusion.
Well, that could actually be like a very specific type of magical item, the Orb of Confusion. Because it's an item that is just permanent, and then it also just kind of creates confusion among the people who are around it. But while we're still in this section here, is that it has to be temporary and it has to be one-time use.
Yeah, and again, it's not really like targeted. It's like kind of indiscriminate.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I could just literally create that as a specific magical item, the Orb of Confusion. But if it's temporary, then it is just a stun bomb. Okay, so other than mines, maybe something else that kind of operates as a trap?
So like all sorts of different actual traps. Like, bear traps, snare traps, let's pick on, no! Anyway, like I was saying, like bear traps, snare traps, pit traps. Mm-hmm. Like all sorts of different kinds of traps.
Mm-hmm. Of course, once again, could be a special item. Isn't a potion or a...
Yeah, no, but you're kind of making things confusing.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm just saying is that right now we're working on the potions list.
Okay.
I can definitely, come up with several examples for standard items that also go under this list. Go ahead and just throw it in here. Standard items. And then put in exactly what you had just written. Bear trap, snare trap. What else did we only just mention needed to go in the standard category?
The other kind of traps to listen?
We also talked about the Orb of Confusion, but that's also just going to be like a magical item. Uh-huh. I mean, standard items, maybe this is a bit of a cop-out, but any type of weapon.
Yeah. Hey, Brady, you mind if I leave the stream for now? Like, my head kind of hurt.
Yeah, well, I was mostly hoping for 90 minutes, so if you'll stay with me for just a minute, and then we'll just go ahead and we'll close out.
Alright, sounds good.
So yeah, we did make some significant headway. I'm going to have to spend a significant more time finalizing this. I am quite literally hoping that I'm going to have this finished by the end of the next 2 days so that I can apply for the Creative Commons license. And then, we'll have that out under CC attribution. And then we can go ahead and we can also just get to work on doing, rewriting and finalizing the standard books after that. So, thank you everybody once again for tuning in. And really quick, I'm going to find somebody to raid on Twitch. Who is on the old purple site today? Is that,
Who is on the Oracle site?
Yeah, let's see. Stribly might be good. Right now they're in the middle of playing Peak.
Peak?
Peak. It's a game that is, I guess, just a slightly more, slightly less thematic version of, Celeste.
Oh, okay.
Let me see, just who are the good personalities at the moment. Actually, I think that might be our best bet. We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna head over to Strubly. Alright. Alright. So everybody say hi to Strubly for us. Once again, our usual stream message is Rainy Raid Roll Initiative.
What up, Biobox?
Yep, that's right. Go give him all your attention.
Yeah. Alright, folks. So, yeah, we're signing off for today. Next week, we're going to be working on creating standard role-playing classes in the D12 Duel Engine. So, watch out for that. In the meantime, though, this is Brenny the RPG Cat saying, remember, BRNY means smart. Nothing is too hard if you use your head. Always be the change you want to see in the world. Have a good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for watching.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you next time.